I died once. Then I died again. Then I lost count. They tell stories about knights who never fall. Mine is the opposite kind. I am the boy who could not stay dead. The knight who kept coming back. Each time a little more hollow. Each time a little more sure. This is the first life I remember losing. And the first morning I woke up afterward. Listen, I want you to understand how it begins. Not with a prophecy. Not with a chosen one. With a spear. With dust in my mouth. With a boy face down in a field that no song would name. That boy was me. I had a name then. Cypress. I would forget it in the dark. I would remember it on the way back. Every time. This is how the first death felt. Banners on a ridge. The smell of horses and burnt grain. Our captain shouting something I could not hear. The line broke before the order finished. I remember thinking my grip was wrong. I remember thinking I should fix it. I did not get the chance. A blade came from the left. Then from the right. Then I was looking up at the sky from the ground. I could not feel my legs. I could feel everything else. A spear went through someone beside me. I told myself to move. My body did not answer. The sky turned the color of old copper. There were screams I could not place. One of them was mine. Then a shadow stepped between me and the light. I did not look at the face. I do not think there was a face. Only the sword. Only the descent. And then the strange quiet that comes after. They tell you death is dark. Mine was not dark. Mine was blue. Blue and cold and infinitely deep. I was falling. I was not afraid yet. That came later. First came the rings. Then came the boat. And the figure in it. Hooded. Patient. Waiting for me the way a creditor waits. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. The figure raised a hand. In its palm there was a small bright thing. It looked like a memory you forgot you had. It looked like a sentence. It was both. Words bloomed in the void. Words that were not spoken. Words that pressed against the inside of my skull. Your fate, they said. And the rings began to turn. I understood then that this was not an offer. It was a sentence in the legal sense. Something I had been condemned to. Something that did not require my consent. I wanted to refuse. I tried to plant my feet on a floor that was not there. I tried to swing the sword I no longer had. Something inside me lit up purple. Something inside me began to scream. And then the world did the impossible. It rewound. Not all at once. Like a thread being pulled through cloth. Like a candle being walked backward into its own flame. Days unspooled. Faces I had buried came back unburied. Wounds I had earned closed themselves with a sigh. And inside it all, I was still there, watching, falling backward into my own life. This was the first sound I made afterward. A noise that was almost a word. A noise that was definitely a question. Then, air, real air, cold and stale and full of someone else's breath. I sat up in a bed I had no right to be in. Hands on my chest in one piece. My fingers worked. My legs answered. My ribs did not grate. I touched my throat. No wound. I touched my face. My face. Younger than it had any business being. Across the dim room, a shape rolled and grunted. A bearded man. My bunkmate. Snoring like the world had not just ended. I knew him. I had not seen him alive in a long time. I had buried what was left of him myself. And here he was, pulling on his boots, cursing the morning, banging a pot against a wooden post outside, telling me the camp was awake, telling me with no idea he was telling me that I was awake too. Awake. In a body that should have been ash. In a day I had already buried. I started to laugh. Then I started to choke. My bunkmate looked over. He asked if I had dreamed of dying again. I told him yes. I did not tell him the rest. That the dream had names. That the dream had been mine. That the dream had been the only true thing left. I tried to stand. My legs were thinner than I remembered. My arms were lighter. I had grown years in a body I no longer owned. Now I owned only its earlier draft. Soft. Unhardened. A version of me that had not yet learned what came next. I knew what came next. That was the awful part. I knew the names of the men who would die at sundown. I knew which of them would be screaming when it happened. I knew the shape of the shadow that took me from above. I knew, and there was no one to tell. Telling would only mean a different kind of grave. So I kept my mouth shut, and I watched a cockroach cross the wooden floor. Same cockroach as the morning I had buried. Same path. Same patient little march. A bare foot came down. My bunkmates. Same kill. Same dull surprise on his face. And inside my chest, something cracked very quietly. Because that was the proof. That was when I stopped pretending it might be a dream. The world had brought me back to the exact same morning. Bug and all. And the question that came after was simple. What was I supposed to do with that? I sat on the edge of the bunk for a long time. I let my hands hang. I let the noise of the camp resume around me. Voices outside. A bard tuning a lyre badly 2 tenths over. The slap of laundry against a rope. All of it ordinary. All of it scheduled. All of it on a clock I now knew the end of. I thought about running. Then I thought about where running would take me. A peasant in a strange village, waiting for the next dream of dying. No. If I had been given this, I would use it. If I had been condemned to live this day again, I would live it differently. I would not be the boy who got cut down by accident. I would not be the body left in someone else's field. That vow felt absurd on the lips of a thin 16-year-old. I made it anyway. I would not die meaninglessly. Not again. Not ever. Then I stood up. Then I went outside. Then I let the camp see me wearing the wrong face. They did not notice. They had never noticed me before. Why would today be different? To them, I was background, a scribbled extra in the margin of a war, a name no one would write down once it was gone. Fine, let them think that. Let them keep their picture of me intact for a little longer. The picture was a tool now, a mask I could wear while I learned to take the day apart and put it back together with me alive at the end. That was the first thing the curse taught me. The dead are also the patient. So I went to the training yard. I picked up a wooden sword. It weighed twice what it should have. My memory said one thing. My arms said another. And the body always wins that argument. Every form I had learned was still in my head. None of them were in my hands. The first swing went wide. The second wrenched my shoulder. The third earned the laughter. I should have expected it. I had been the joke of this camp before. I had forgotten how it sounded from the inside. A man with a ladle pointed and laughed. A man with a missing leg told me to try sweeping floors. Another spilled ale across his beard and said nothing at all, which was somehow worse. I sat down in the dirt. I bit a piece of cloth so I would not bite my own tongue, and I let them have their laugh. Because here was the thing they did not know. I had time. Even if I died at sundown, I had time. Time was the one thing the curse had given me for free. Everything else I would have to take. So I waited for the camp to sleep. Then I went to find a tree. There was an old one at the edge of the camp, scarred, older than the war that had brought us here. It had stood through worse than me. Tonight I wanted to add to its scars. I stood under its branches in the cold. I drew the wooden sword again. I told my body what I wanted from it. My body did not believe me. So I taught it the only way I knew. By force. By repetition. By making the same swing 1,000 times until it answered. Strike. Strike. Strike! Stop counting. Start again. The bark came away in pieces. My palms came away in pieces too. I bound them with strips torn from my own shirt, and I went back to the tree. I went back to the tree. I went back to the tree, until the sky cracked open along its edges, until the first cooks were beating pots in the camp behind me, until the bunkmate I had buried once was rolling out of bed for breakfast. I came back into the tent on shaking legs. He looked at the blood on my hands. He asked what fight I had been in. I told him I had been in a fight with myself. He thought it was a joke. He thought a lot of things were jokes. I let him. The day moved. The day moved the way it always had. Drills with the squad. Inspection by the grizzled warrior who would die alongside me. His name was on the list. His name was always on the list. He looked at me with that knowing skepticism old men keep ready, like he knew something I did not. Today, the joke was on him. I knew everything. I just did not yet know how to use it. Then the horns sounded, and the day I had already buried opened its mouth again. The order came down the line the way it had before. Form up. Hold the ridge. Wait for cavalry that would not come. I knew that part. I had learned it the long way. I marched anyway, because what else was I supposed to do? Run and prove the curse needed a coward to land on? No, I would meet the same field again. This time I would meet it with a memory. The shapes came up over the ridge. Banners in the wrong direction. Soldiers moving the way bad weather moves in one bad gust. And then we were inside it. And memory was not enough. Memory tells you where the blade is coming from. Memory does not give you the speed to move out of its way. My body was still slower than my mind. My grip still wrong. My breath still wasted on every other swing. I lasted longer. That was something. I killed a man I had not killed the first time. That was also something. And then a spear found a different gap in the same armor. And the world dimmed at the edges. And the boatman waited again. He did not look surprised. He had known I would be back. Of course he had. He had been waiting for the boy who could not stay dead. And the boy had not disappointed him. The rings turned. The candle walked backward into its flame. And the cockroach began its march for the third time. The third life began the way the second had. With a noise in my throat. With a question I did not let out. With a bunkmate snoring. And a pot already swinging on a wooden post. So, this was the rule then. Die at sundown. Wake at dawn. Same room. Same bunkmate. Same cockroach. Same wooden sword that was too heavy for the body I had been returned to. I lay there and let it settle in. Some men would have broken. Some men would have stopped getting out of bed. I understood the appeal. I just did not have the luxury. Because under the despair, there was another feeling. A small one. A dangerous one. Useful. This time, I did not waste the morning on the yard. This time, I went straight to the tree before sunrise. The tree was where I would live for as long as I had this body. The tree did not laugh. The tree did not have opinions about my grip. The tree only kept its place and let me hit it. Strike, breathe, strike, find the angle. Find the angle that did not jar the shoulder. Find the breath that did not waste itself between blows. This was the work of 1,000 mornings. I would have 1,000 mornings to do it. That was the trade. That was the unspoken offer in the boatman's hand. Time for a price you paid at sundown. Days bled into mornings. Mornings bled back into the same day. And I learned. I learned which orders to obey. I learned which orders to misread on purpose. I learned the names of men whose names no one had bothered to learn. Brother squad leader, the old archer with the bad foot, the bearded man who would not survive the 3rd hour of the next fight. I learned them so that, when they died, I would at least have known them. It seemed the least I could do. Some lives I learned just to bury them better. Some I learned hoping to keep. Hope is a habit you cannot unlearn even when you should. I tried not to make many friends. I made some anyway. My bunkmate, mostly by accident. He had a way of asking questions you could not refuse. He asked once why I trained at night. I told him I could not sleep. He said no one in this camp slept anyway. He said that was a soldier's secret, that when the lamps went out, the camp lay still and only pretended. Underneath it, everyone was running their own losing argument with the dark. I had never thought of it that way. I thought of it that way after he said it. I started watching the camp at night, not to spy, to learn it. The way a man learns a house he means to defend. I learned which tents had 2 flaps. I learned which had only one and a long blind side. I learned which sentries fell asleep at the 3rd bell. I learned the answer to where assassins would come from is always the blind side. I did not know yet that there would be assassins. That part comes later. For now, I trained. I hung from branches until my arms were stone. I lifted things that were too heavy for me. Then heavier things. Then a boulder that the squad used to weight the cookpots. My bunkmate watched me lift it and laughed. Then he stopped laughing. Then he wanted to know how. I told him I had been hungry for a long time. He thought I meant for food. I let him. The body began to answer. Slowly, in the way a stubborn animal learns its new owner. By the 7th or 8th dawn, the wooden sword stopped wrenching my shoulder. By the 10th, I could keep the swing straight at the end of the form. By the 15th, I caught the grizzled warrior looking at me twice, like he was trying to place a face he had seen before. He could not place it, because the face had not lived long enough to leave him a memory. Not yet. He liked the change anyway. He gave me the dirty smile old soldiers give the young, and he said the words I had once given anything to hear. He told me I could lead the 2nd squad on patrol. Brother Sir Squad Leader. That was the rank he gave me. Brother to the men I was about to mislead into a forest. Brother to a list of names I now intended to keep. I bowed my head and accepted. Then I went and stood under my tree, and I asked it what came after, because I had never lived this far before. The cockroach march was familiar. The horns of the first battle were familiar. The face of the boatman was familiar. But the squad assignment was not. It was new ground. And new ground is where men die who thought they knew the road. I tightened the grip on the sword. I told myself the rules again. I would not die meaninglessly. I would not waste the life this stranger of a boatman had given me. I would not let the names go unrecorded, even if I was the only one who ever read the list. Even if every loop washed it clean again. That night, something else happened. Something that did not match any death I had lived. Something with a hood. Something with a blade. Something that walked into our tent in the small hours and was not supposed to be there. This time, it was not me. This time, it was him. The blonde noble who slept in our row of bunks. The one nobody had told me to pay attention to. Until tonight. Tonight, I would learn his name. Tonight, I would learn that some deaths in this camp were not mine to inherit. Some were aimed elsewhere. Some I would have to step in front of, if I wanted to keep my list whole. It started with a sound that was almost nothing. A curtain shifting against wood, a weight settling on the floorboards. I had taught myself to wake at sounds like that. My eyes opened in the dark. I did not move my body. Across the tent, the blonde noble slept, drooling, the way the careless sleep. Defenseless, the way the wanted sleep. Above him stood the shape I would come to know too well. Hood, cloak, a blade thin enough to fold inside a sleeve. I had a heartbeat to decide, and I had already decided long before this loop. I rolled off the bunk. I came up between him and the blade. I tried to shout. The hood moved faster than my mouth. The thin blade went through my throat, and the night turned wet and warm at the front of my shirt. I do not recommend dying that way. It is quieter than the battlefield. It is also more personal. On the field, a man kills kills you because the line told him to. In a tent, a man kills you because he chose to step inside it. I saw the blonde noble's eyes open. I saw him understand very slowly that he was not the one bleeding. Then the boatman, then the rings, then the candle, then the cockroach. And a morning I now had to spend differently. Because death at sundown was a problem with a known shape. Death at midnight was a different animal. It moved in a tent. It chose its target. It did not announce itself with horns, which meant I had to learn its hours. Then maybe I'd predict the moment the assassins would appear. That was the new sentence in my head. I lay in my bunk that morning and rolled it around like a coin. Predict the moment. Place yourself in it before they do. Make the tent unsafe for them, not him. Easy to say to a ceiling. Less easy to do in the dark. First, I had to know who the boy was. So I asked, not directly, indirectly. In the camp, you learn a man's name from the men who envy him. Envy made him easy to identify. They called him a few things, some respectful, most not. Behind it all was a single name, a noble house. A title bigger than his shoulders had any right to carry. That was why someone wanted him gone. That was why a hood had come for him in the night. Politics. The other kind of war. The kind we all pretended was not happening underneath this one. Now, it was my problem. Now he was on the list. And the list was the only thing I had left that meant anything. So I sat with him at dinner. He thought it was strange. He kept looking at me sideways, like a noble looks at a stray dog that has come too close to the table. I let him look. I asked him about his family. I asked who would mourn him if he died. That made him laugh, which I had not expected. He laughed the way someone laughs about being mortal in front of friends. Then he sobered and gave me a name, a house, a river, a father who would not mourn him, and a brother who would. 2 of his men in this camp. None of his enemies, he said, that he knew of. Of course not. The kind of enemy he had did not announce themselves. They put on hoods. They picked the 3rd bell. They came down the blind side of a tent at the edge of the camp. That night, I did not sleep on my own bunk. I lay on his. He thought it was hazing. I let him. I told him he could have my bunk for one night. I told him if he asked why again, I would not answer. He sneered a little. He turned over. He fell asleep faster than someone marked for death has any business doing. I held my breath. I held it for hours. And at the 3rd bell, the curtain shifted again. This time, I was not asleep. This time, I had a blade in my hand under the blanket. This time, the hood walked into a problem he had not budgeted for. I let him put the thin sleeve blade where he thought a throat would be. Then I came up with mine. I went for the knee first. The body that hunts at night does not hunt well on one leg, he hissed. He twisted. He was better than me, even now, but he had not expected me. That difference was enough. The tent erupted. Boots in the dirt outside. Lamps lit too late, the way lamps always are. Voices shouting names that did not belong to me. I had the hood pinned by the hair. I had the thin blade against his own ribs. And I had a question waiting on my tongue. Who sent you? Who paid you? How many times have you come into this tent on this night? He grinned at me. He grinned the way a man grins when he has already won the long game. He told me a name I would carry with me into every loop that came after. Then he bit something in his teeth. Then he went limp under me. Then he was gone, down the only road none of us could follow back. I sat in the dark for a long time after that. The blonde noble sat up in my bunk and stared. He did not thank me. He did not have the words yet. Most men do not know what to say when a stranger refuses to let them die. They put me in the infirmary tent that night. Not because I was hurt, because they did not know what else to do with me. A boy who had killed a hooded man in the dark. A boy who had been sleeping in the wrong bunk on purpose. A boy who, when asked how he knew, would not say. The grizzled warrior came to question me. He sat on a stool and watched me for a long time. He asked one question. Who told you? I told him nobody had told me. He told me very calmly that he did not believe me. That was fair. In his place, I would not have believed me either. He left without a name to put on his report. That suited both of us. After him came others. A muscular man with worry behind his eyes. A red-haired soldier who refused to sit down. A blonde commander who stood at the foot of the bed and did not speak. They all wanted to know the same thing. They all left with the same answer, which was no answer at all. Then he came in. The boy whose name I had earned the right to know. He stood at the foot of my bed and chewed an apple. He looked everywhere but at me. He told me finally that he supposed he owed me a debt. I told him no debt was owed. He raised an eyebrow at that. Nobles do not understand the absence of debts. To them, every kindness is a future receipt. I tried to explain it differently. I told him I had not done it for him. I had done it for myself. He liked that better. That he could understand. He sat on the edge of the bed. He looked at me a long time. Then he asked the question the others had not thought to ask. How many times have you done this? That stopped me. That word. times. He could not have known what he had said. He could only have guessed. Something in my face. Something in the way I had moved at the third bell. Something only a man with his own private dread would recognize. I told him a number. I do not remember what number. It was probably a lie. It was probably small. In truth, I had lost count long before that morning. He nodded as if the number was reasonable. He stood up. He looked back at the tent flap. He looked at me one more time, the way you look at a problem. And then he said the thing I would carry with me for every loop that came after. He said he had been having dreams. Dreams of a knight in chains. A knight under a lantern. A knight who never stayed dead. He had not known the dreams were a person. He thought, looking at me, he might have just found one. I did not say anything. I could not. He let himself out of the tent. I sat alone in the lampglow for a long time. A bandaged hand on a borrowed blanket. A boy in the wrong body in the wrong night of a war he had already lost once. And from somewhere far above the world there came a sound. Like chains being shaken. Like a lantern swinging from a beam in a place I had never been. Like a name being written down for the first time. Eternally regressing night. Apparently that was what I was now. Apparently the world had decided to title me. Apparently I had a brand, whether I wanted one or not. I lay back and laughed. The kind of laugh you make when nothing else makes sense. The kind of laugh that does not turn into anything good. Outside, a flag whipped against its pole. Outside, the camp went on the way camps go on. Inside, I closed my eyes. And the second attempt came faster than the first. They sent another one. Of course they did. Hoods come in twos when the first one fails to come home. This one came across the rooftops of the supply tents. This one was quieter than the first. This one was better. I had been waiting at the window. I had been waiting because I had already lived through this once now. Memory, it turns out, accelerates the second time. Patterns, repetitions, the shape of footsteps that did not belong to my camp. I let the second one come down the tent flap the way the first had. I let him commit to the strike. Then I cut him at the wrist. Then I cut him at the throat. And the second hood went down without ever knowing the name of the boy who had killed him. There would be a third. And a fourth, and as many as the man behind the hoods could afford. That was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight I let the camp sleep. Tonight I let the blonde noble believe I was just lucky. Tonight I lay in a bandaged bed and stared at the ceiling, and I let the new title settle. Night, said the world. Night, said the dreams. Night, said the hand that had risen out of the void with a sentence in its palm. Fine, fine, I told the ceiling. Make me a knight then. Make me the knight who keeps coming back. The boy who could not stay dead. The weapon that learned to read its own loop. Sharpen me as many times as you need. I will keep my list. I will keep my vow. I will keep coming back. And one of these mornings, I told the ceiling, one of these mornings, I will figure out who sent the hoods, and I will walk into his house, and he will learn that some titles are not gifts. Some are warnings. Some are debts you should not have run up. Some are knights wearing chains, because no other shape would fit. Outside, a bird flew through a starry sky. Inside, I finally fell asleep. For the first night in a long string of nights, without dreaming of the boatman. There were days after that I did not have to fight for. Days the camp gave me as a kind of accident. A bandage that needed changing. A wound that was not as bad as it looked. A bunkmate who would not let me out of his sight. Even the bard left his lyre by the bed for a morning. So I learned about silence. I learned about the shape of mornings when you do not have to die in them. I learned that the camp had a kind of music when you stopped fighting it. The hammer at the smithy. The slap of laundry. The argument between the cook and the man who had stolen his ladle. All of it had been there before. None of it had reached me before. I had been too busy dying to listen. That was on me. She arrived on the fourth day. An elf, pale, quiet, wrapped in a cloak the color of riverstone. She did not announce herself. She walked into the infirmary tent and stood at the foot of my bed. And she looked at me the way an apothecary looks at a poison, like she could not decide whether to label me or pour me out. I asked her what she wanted. She did not answer in words. She put a hand on my chest, just above the heart. She closed her eyes. She listened. Then she opened her eyes and stepped back. She told me my soul had a stutter in it. She told me she had never heard a soul stutter like that before. She told me with a small thin smile that I should be more careful. That souls were not really meant to repeat themselves. I asked her how she had heard it. She told me her people listened to things mine could not. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the floor. She did not ask why I stuttered, which was kind, in its way. And the kindness of strangers in this camp was so rare it cost me my voice. Her name I will save for later. Names are a kind of weight in a loop. You learn to be careful which ones you carry. The rain came on the sixth day. The kind of rain that arrives like a sentence. heavy, declarative, permanent until it decided otherwise. The camp slowed. Tents shed water in long gray curtains. Sentries hunched and cursed under tarp eaves. Inside our bunkhouse, the lamps had to work twice as hard. Men ate without speaking. Men slept without sleeping. Men read by candle stubs they were not supposed to be burning. My bunkmate cleaned his axe. The red-haired soldier wrung his hands. The blonde noble pretended to be bored, which was his preferred disguise. I sat by the window and watched the water beat against canvas. And I thought about the man whose name had been spat at me by a dying hood. Some names you can carry like a coin in your pocket. Some you have to bury in a soft place inside the ribs. This one was the second kind. I would dig it back up when the time came. Until then, I would let the rain be my teacher. Patience is a kind of weapon if you live long enough to wield it. Late on the second rainy night, the bearded warrior sat down beside me. He did not say anything for a while. Then he asked, very quietly, whether I had been having dreams. I told him I did not have dreams, only memories that had not happened yet. He did not laugh. He nodded slowly. Then he told me the camp had a story about that. A story about a knight who came back. A story about a chained lantern that swung over a man who was always trying to come home. He said he had thought it was a children's story. He was not so sure anymore. I did not tell him whether he was right. I let him decide. That, too, was a kind of mercy. Belief is a heavier blade than disbelief. I would not put it in his hand uninvited. Days bled. The rain stopped. The sun came back the way the sun does, with no apology. The blonde noble was healed enough to walk. The elf had melted back into wherever elves went. The grizzled warrior had filed his report and lost interest. And the army needed scouts. They always need scouts. In every loop, in every life, the army needs scouts. And the scouts they pick are always the men nobody will mourn. Brother squad leader. That was the rank I had. That was the rank that put me on a roster I had read in a previous death. Scout the eastern grasslands. Find the enemy column before they find us. Lose half your men along the way. That last part was not in the order. That last part was in my memory, which meant I would have to argue with the order, which meant somebody was going to start hating me. That was fine. I had been hated before. Being hated by the living was preferable to mourning the dead. I had done the math on that one a long time ago. The morning we marched out, the camp was bright the way it is bright in a poem. Tents in rows. A bard playing badly. Smoke from breakfasts. The bearded warrior gave me a look I could not read. The blonde noble did not come out to see me off. The elf was not there. That was correct. That was how the morning had gone the first time, which meant nothing had changed yet, which meant change would have to be done by hand. Mine. The grasslands opened in front of us the way a mouth opens. Tall enough to hide a man. Tall enough to hide a column. Tall enough, I remembered, to hide something worse. The squad behind me did not know that. 8 men, 2 of them archers. One a tracker with a smirk and a name I had once carved into a fence. All of them younger than they looked. All of them about to be tested. The order said go east until you find the column. I took us north. The tracker complained. The grizzled second-in-command complained louder. I let them because I knew what was east. East was where the bones were buried last time. East was where I had watched the smirking tracker die with arrows in him. North smelled wrong, they said. Wrong was fine. Wrong was alive. We moved through the grass. Bent, low, quiet. Cautious as men who had been cautious in another life. I had been here before. Not this place exactly. This place is twin. All grasslands begin to rhyme after the third loop. We found tracks. Not the column. Something else. Something with claws and a longer stride than any horse. The tracker crouched and went pale. He started saying the kind of prayers that come out crooked. I told him to be quiet. I told him whatever it was had not yet decided we were dinner. Then the foliage moved, and the thing inside it disagreed. It came out of the grass like a question, big as a small horse. Blue eyes that did not belong to anything on the maps. Teeth that were not arranged for chewing. The tracker screamed. That also was not new. In the previous loop, he had screamed and then he had died. Tonight I had memorized the angle of its lunge. Tonight I stepped between him and its weight. My sword found the shoulder it had not found before. The thing screamed back. Then it ran. Then the foliage closed around the place it had been. And the squad understood suddenly what kind of leader they had drawn. The grizzled second-in-command did not complain again. The tracker did not pray again. The young archers did not argue with my next instruction, which was to keep moving. North, the wrong direction. Alive. We crested the next rise at dusk, and there it was. The column, 3 times the size of what the order had described. Camped where no one in our camp expected them to be. 2,000 spears if it was one. A banner I did not recognize. A creature on it I did not want to think about. This was the trap. This was the reason scouts kept dying in this stretch of grass. This was the answer the army had been refusing to ask the right question to find. I motioned the squad flat. We counted. We marked banners. We did not engage. Engaging this column with 8 men is a poem about graves. I had no interest in writing one. Then we backed away the way we had come, slowly, through the grass, past the place where the blue-eyed thing had vanished, past the prince we had been so frightened of, until we hit the tree line again. And then the hoods. Of course there were more hoods. There were always more hoods. The man who had paid for the first 2 had decided to spend the price of an 8th. They came out of the trees at dusk. They had bows. They had patience. They had been waiting since morning. They had not been waiting for us. They had been waiting for him, the blonde noble who, by camp regulation, should not have been in my squad, who had pulled rank to come with us anyway, who had, against all sense, decided he wanted to see his savior at work. Curiosity gets nobles killed. Curiosity was about to get him killed again. Not on my watch. Not on this loop. Not on the day I had been keeping his name on the list. I gave one order, hit them from the side. My archers got the first volley off. My tracker, of all men, brought down 2 with a knife he did not know he could throw. I went straight for the line of hoods, because I had been hoods, because I knew which way they pivoted under pressure, because the boy on the ground behind me was on a list I had no intention of revising. I cut 2. I cut 3. The 4th caught me in the thigh with a knife, and I cut him anyway. By the time the dust settled, there were 6 hoods in the grass and one of my men gone. The smirking tracker. Of course, it was him. Some men are written in pencil. Some lives the loop will not let you save. I have learned not to take it personally. It does not stop me from grinding my teeth about it. The grizzled second-in-command knelt beside the body. He looked up at me. He did not say a word. He did not have to. There were 6 fewer hoods in the world. There were 7 of us alive. There was a noble who had finally seen what kind of weapon he had been gifted. And there was an army column behind us we had to walk back to camp and warn. Walk. Through grass that was beginning to smell like smoke. Because somewhere in the chaos, one of the hood's torches had fallen, and the dry grass had decided to make a sermon out of it. The fire chased us for 2 miles. It chased us with the patience of something that knew it would win in the end. We ran. We carried the wounded. We did not stop to count breath. When the rain came back, late and grudging, we welcomed it like a god. Wet men do not burn as easily. Wet grass is slow about catching. We made the tree line by midnight. We made the road by dawn. We saw the camp's flags in the distance, and someone, I think the blonde noble, started to cry. I let him. Some crying is earned. Some is a kind of survival. Some is the body finally getting permission to be afraid. I had not done it myself in a long time. I did not begrudge him. We came back to a camp that had decided we were dead. There is a particular silence reserved for that. It is louder than cheering. Men do not know what to do with a corpse that walks in eating bread. They settled mostly on slapping my back too hard. I let them. There are worse bruises than the ones that come from being glad. The bearded warrior found me at the fire that night. He did not say much. He sat and poured and watched the wood do its slow, honest work. After a long time, he said, "You are not the boy I was assigned." I said, "No." He said, "Are you going to tell me who you are?" I said, "I do not know the answer to that yet." He nodded the way men nod when they accept that they will not be told. Then he said the thing I had been waiting for. He said, "The captain wants to see you at dawn." He said it the way you tell a man his wedding has been moved. I went at dawn. The captain was the blonde noble. Of course he was. Loops are not subtle. He stood at the practice yard with 2 wooden swords. He threw one at me without looking. I caught it. That was the first thing he tested. The second was the question of whether I knew what to do with it. He did not ask in words. He came in low fast, the way a man comes in who has been killing things since he was a boy. I parried badly, deliberately badly. There is no faster way to get a teacher to teach than to be a little worse than he expects. He sighed. He stepped back. He said, "You are holding the sword like a farmer." I said, "My father was one." It was even true. He said, "Your father is dead." I said, "Yes." He said, "Then, he is no longer your teacher." And he showed me how to hold a sword. I already knew how. I had known how for what felt like a small country of lifetimes. But there is a thing that happens when a man who is good at a thing teaches it to you for the first time. Even if you have made the shape before, something settles. Something that the loop had not been able to teach me. The grip is not the sword. The grip is the conversation. And I had been shouting for 30 deaths. I went quiet under his hand. I let him correct my wrist and push my shoulder down. I let him be a teacher. It felt strange. It felt like cheating. It also felt very faintly like the thing that boys are supposed to have. We trained every morning after that. He never said why he had chosen me. I never asked him to thank me for the night I died in his place. Some gratitude loses its shape when you put it into words. My sword work improved in front of witnesses, which is to say, I let what I already knew slowly become visible. I miscounted on purpose. I lost matches I could have won. I won matches I should have lost, so the men did not lose hope in their teacher. It was the most careful theater I had ever performed. Most actors die only once at the end. I died every time I stopped paying attention. The blonde captain watched me with a face that gave nothing. One morning, he stopped a duel mid-strike. He held my wrist where it had moved, without thinking. He said, "Where did you learn that?" I said, "I do not remember." He said, "Men who do not remember do not move like that." I said, "Perhaps I am unusual." He said, "You are." He said it the way men say the word grenade, carefully. After that, he watched me a little differently. Not like prey, not like a son, like a problem that had been delivered to his tent without a sender, which was fair. That was exactly what I was. I had been the boy who could not stay dead. Now I was becoming the weapon that learned to read its own loop. And weapons that read themselves are dangerous to their owners. He knew it. I knew he knew it. We did not discuss it. We kept training instead. Some conversations have to be had with steel because the mouth is too small for them. I would not die meaninglessly. Not again. Not while a man who did not owe me anything kept teaching me how to live. Then the horn sounded. Not the drill horn. The other one. The horn the camp keeps for the day it has been afraid of. Scouts had seen the column. The full one. Wolf banners moving south on the white road. A foreign army where no foreign army should have been. My mouth went dry. I had not been here for this part of the loop yet. This was new. New is what kills you when you are arrogant about a loop. I told myself that twice. Then a third time, the way a man checks a knot. We rode out at noon under a sky that had forgotten how to be blue. By dusk, the snow had started. By midnight, the snow had decided. A blizzard does not arrive. A blizzard agrees to be there with you. And then it eats your friends. We met them in a valley I did not recognize. White on white. Wolf banners gone gray in the storm. Horses screaming in a language I did not have a word for. The blonde captain rode beside me. He did not say be careful. He had stopped saying things like that to me. He said, "You take the left flank, I take the center." He said, "If you see the man in the dark hood, you run." I did not ask which dark hood. In a war full of hoods, you do not ask. You learn which one your captain has gone pale for. Then you decide whether to obey him. I had already decided. It is one of the more honest gifts the loop has given me. I no longer have to lie to myself about whether I will run. The flank held for an hour. Then it bent and broke. Then it was a thing happening to other men while I cut my way forward. I cut a spearman who looked too old to be there. I cut a boy who looked too young. I added the second one to the list. The knight who kept coming back keeps a long one. The center was where the captain was. I went to the center, because that is what you do when a man teaches you how to hold a sword. You do not let him die alone in a blizzard. Not the first time. Not ever. The hood was already there. Tall and wrong, the way the assassin had been wrong, but bigger. Bigger and older and patient. The captain was on his knees in front of him, not bleeding yet. Held the way a cat holds a thing it is not yet bored of. I moved. I did not think. Thinking is for men who have only one life to spend. The hood turned toward me, and the storm went quiet the way a room goes quiet when the wrong man walks in. He said one word. He said it in a voice that did not move air. He said, again, I did not understand. Then I understood with my whole spine. He knew. He knew about the loop. He had been waiting for me to come back to this place. He had been counting how many times. I had been the one keeping a list. It had not occurred to me in all those deaths that someone else might also be writing one. The cold under the cold arrived. I lunged anyway, because the captain was still breathing, because the knight who kept coming back had nothing left to lose that he had not lost already. Because some things you do not skip even when you know how the page ends. The hood lifted one hand. The blizzard lifted with it. My sword was at his chest. Then the spear was through mine. I did not see where it came from. That is the truest part of any death. You never see the one that does it. The captain was shouting my name. My real one. Cyprus, he was shouting. It is a strange thing to hear a man use your name at the moment it stops being useful to you. I tried to answer. Blood does not let you. The hood leaned in close to my face. He smelled like a library that had been left in winter. Old paper and old cold. He said, go. He said, come back. He said, do it again. He said, I will be here. He said, I am always here. And I understood, the way a man understands a thing in the second his life leaves him. The loop was not mine. It had never been mine. Someone had built it. Someone had been waiting inside it. For me. Specifically for me. The boy who could not stay dead grinned anyway. Because if a thing is waiting, a thing can be killed. I would not die meaninglessly. Not again. Not ever. I will come back, I told him with my eyes. And next time I will be the one counting. Then the cold took the rest.